Hello? Hello.
Do you want to announce it?
Please make your way.
The port- oh, no, when you get to announce it. No.
Hello. Please make your way inside the room. Please make your way to your seats.
The floor is really good.
Come on in and please make your way to a comfortable place, please. There's still a little bit of room inside. Too bad the Arsenal corridor meetings weren't like this.
Right?
She's with VHB.
Are they on this one too?
Yeah, they got hired.
They hired them? DPD? Just this project? Or
I guess so. Please make your way inside. Can I have a little more volume, just a little bit more?
Do you have to do that FM thing again, maybe?
It's a little threatening. Just don't lurk behind me.
Anybody else in the hallway still?
No lurking. Watertown.
Come on in, everybody. Get cozy. Is anybody in that seat over there?
this woman here with
Trying to leave that because she's going to come back and sit in that. Nancy's going to sit in that. She's the Regina Villa facilitator.
But this is our meeting.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure it's our meeting.
No, it is. No, she's going to facilitate the Q&A. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Let's get started. Hey, Sarge.
The floor is really comfortable.
Some
I can
turnout.
vouch for that.
Okay, so to introduce myself, my name is Aaron Dushku. I'm the chair of the Town Council Committee on Public Works. Councilor Falkoff, secretary. Councilor Palumbo, the vice chair. We're here to hear what you guys think about these project ideas and to hear a little bit from the architects. I don't know if you guys know this, but last year, Watertown hosted a wonderful kind of planning process around the Arsenal corridor, where Massachusetts Department of Transportation paid for this year-long study, and one of the contractor and consultant in charge was VHB, our Watertown-based planning consulting company. And they put together some really good recommendations through a long public process. And the number one recommendation that was voted by the public in their meetings was to do something about Watertown Square. So on top of that, we have, you might have heard, anyone ever heard of something called I-Cubed? Yep, it's a nice little pot of money that's coming to the town. It's, what is it? $25 million. Thank you, Elodia. $25 million worth of infrastructure improvements that the Watertown is going to be benefiting from, and one of the projects on that list is Watertown Square improvements. So we have a nice opportunity to do exactly what the public asked for in the MassDOT corridor program and get it all paid for by the state and other folks. So we brought this particular project forward as one of the first ones to get public input on. There has been some information out there about it, and today you're going to see a lot of that. I know a lot of people have some ideas of what it is already, but there's actually several scenarios that are going to be presented tonight, and you're going to get a chance to talk about those and your feelings on those. So in addition to today's presentation, which is the beginning of a process, you're going to be able to have a chance to talk on the mic. You're also going to be able to go out in the hallway and see some of the drawings on the boards out there. There are some comment cards passing around. Please take a look at those. And then there are these little cards here that have the URL for a website that the town's consultant has developed for this project called WatertownSquareImprovements.com. If you're watching at home, or if you're here and you don't have a chance to speak tonight, you can go on the website and submit your comments about the project there. There's also a sign-in sheet going around. So where is it right now? Okay, keep it moving around. We want to make sure everybody gets signed in. When you get on this website, you can get subscribed to updates on this project also. It's a nice tool, and it's been working pretty well. I've already gotten a couple. So given that we have a lot of people here today, we're going to try to move pretty fast through the presentation. I want to make sure that they get, Laura is our representative from VHB who's going to give the presentation today. I want to make sure she gets through it, so we're going to have her present, then we're going to have the committee here, which is going to kind of event. We're eventually going to recommend at some point in the future to move this forward to the council for approval, I suppose. So we're going to get our first whack with some questions, and then we're going to open it up to you guys after that. I want to ask my colleagues at the table here, since we do have a printed copy of the presentation, if you have questions about the material in the presentation, jot it down on your copy, and then let's save them for the end of the presentation so that we don't ask questions about things that are coming up in the presentation afterward. And, I also want to introduce some people to you guys. In the audience here, we have elected representatives in the form of Representative John Heck. Thank you for getting the corridor study started for us. We owe him a debt of gratitude for that. Is there anyone else from the state level here? Nope. And Town Council President Mark Sedaris is here. Town Councilors Vinnie Picciarelli, Mike DeToli,
Lisa,
Feltner,
Kenny.
Woodland, wave to the crowd. Am I missing anybody else? Thank you guys all for coming. It's an important project. And then from the town staff, would you all raise your hands where you are? We got the Department of Public Works with these two gentlemen here. We got Gideon in the doorway there with planning and community development, and probably somebody else here.
Dan Driscoll from DCR.
Mr. Dan Driscoll from DCR, also a very important partner on this project. And that should do it. Mr. Counselor.
I just want to put this in some context. You may wonder why we're meeting here. It was because it was a mistake. No. I want to put this in some context. While we're talking about this particular project, and there are dual information coming from two different sources. One, the folks who did the Arsenal Corridor study recommended changes, as Aaron said, and then there's the I-cubed. I do want to say, though, that when we passed the I-cube, there was significant concern amongst a number of councilors, including myself, about the lack of community input into the 9 projects that were selected to be done by the $25 million. There was significant concern about the viability of doing all those projects within 3 years. And as I mentioned, significant concerns about the lack of input about who selected those 9 projects. Council President Sedaris was aware of this, and in his wisdom, he chose to assign a number of those projects to committees. So you might be wondering why this project isn't presented by the Department of Public Works or by the Community Development Planning Department. Rather, why is it being presented in front of a town council committee? And that is the reason. Council President Sedaris felt like this needs to be a more open and transparent process, and therefore assigned this and a number of the other projects, not all 9, but a number of the other projects to various committees. I believe this committee has 3 of the projects to be discussed. I should also say this is the beginning of the process. This is not the end. There'll be many opportunities for community input in addition to the ones that you can do online. And I should say that while I can't guarantee anything, I would hope that our next meeting would be in a more suitable location. I guess someplace like the library. But I wanted to put this in some context of why you're sitting in front of 3 members of a subcommittee of the town council.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And I appreciate that background, and I appreciate all of you for being here today. I also forgot to introduce, we have the town, in an effort to do a better job of communicating stuff like this out to you, we have a public affairs consultant also in the room here. That's Nancy and Sarah. You'll hear more from them later on. They're with Regina Villa, and they're the ones who are designing the website, and will be synthesizing a lot of the commentary that's coming in. So without further ado, I think we should give the floor to Ms. Castelli from VHB to tell us a little bit about the project. Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Counselor. So I have flashed on the screen what looks like a very brief agenda, but we have a lot of information to cover. I'm hoping to not take more than 20 to 30 minutes so that we can open up the floor to discussion. So just a brief note of our project teams and partners. The counselors already recognized a lot of people here. For the design team, we're being represented by the Department of Public Works, VHB, World Tech, and Regina Villa Associates. They're all off to my left somewhere, hiding out, taking notes. So the entire project team is here tonight so that we can hear all the comments firsthand. We also have a number of project partners, including Community Development, Athena Health, DCR, MBTA, and MassDOT, and I believe almost everybody is also represented here tonight, so they're able to hear your comments firsthand. So I'd like to take a step back to the Arsenal Street Corridor study. When we were talking about alternatives for that study, we really came up with two options for Watertown Square. The first option would be to upgrade to what's known as a state of good repair, which is primarily maintenance, repaving the street, putting in new signage and striping, modifying traffic signal timings. I think the biggest chunk of work would be bringing the intersection up to current accessibility standards to the extent that's possible. And then the other option was implementing what ultimately became the recommendations of the study to really improve multimodal access through the square, which I'll get to in a minute. But what we discovered that meant is that it's really hard to do unless you modify Charles River Road in some way. So that kind of became the focus of what we looked at in the Arsenal Corridor Street study, and that's the focus of tonight's discussion. I think option one is fairly self-explanatory. It really doesn't need a series of meetings. I think a lot of people wouldn't notice much of a difference if we went out and we made those changes. Option two really starts to get at what would you like the square to look like for the next 30 years, and who would you like the square to accommodate and in what ways? So, but I don't recognize everybody in this room. I do certainly recognize some people, so I feel like not everybody was able to participate in the public meetings we had for the corridor study. So I just want to take a step back, because I do feel like there's a lot of different versions of what the recommendations of the study were, and this is important, so I want to make sure that everybody's kind of working from the same set of facts. For the existing conditions evaluation that we did for the corridor study, you know, the list on the screen probably doesn't surprise you. Traffic operations are poor. It takes a really long time to cross the street because the crossings are so long. The timings is really, sometimes it's hard to get across the street, particularly for people who have mobility or vision challenges, because the crossings are so long and the walk lights are no longer up to what is current standard, although they were standard when they were developed. There aren't bicycle accommodations. It's really confusing, especially if you're on Galen Street and you're not familiar with the area, to know what lane you're supposed to be in to go in any direction. And it's also been noted by the state as a high crash location or eligible for Highway Safety Improvement Program funding. So it rose to the top as one of our biggest and most talked about alternatives. And it was Alternative 7, and the recommendation was the full development and implementation of multimodal improvements of Watertown Square. At the time, it was medium term, which was the 5 to 10 year time frame, because it was anticipated it would become a state project through the Transportation Improvement Program. We have other funding sources that might speed this up a little bit, which is, I think, why we're here so early in the process tonight. And I just have a quote on the screen, and I wasn't going to read it, but since there are so many people here who probably can't see the screen, I will read it. It's from the executive summary, and it says, Alternative 7 will include further refinement, traffic analysis, and more detailed evaluation of the potential benefits and impacts on neighborhood streets, specifically Charles River Road, Irving Street, North Beacon Street, and Riverside Street. And those are in alphabetical order. They're not in any particular order. But the reason why I wanted to read it is because the recommendations from the study were not to implement the concept plan. The recommendations from the study were to talk about what's on the concept plan and make it better and have more public discussion about it and have further traffic analysis and further evaluation. So I do feel like, you know, we've heard through the grapevine that people think that this is the plan and that we're ready to go to construction, and that's not true. So I want everybody to kind of be working from that fact to know that, as someone mentioned, this is the first step in the process, and we're here tonight to get your feedback. And these are the recommendations that are incorporated in the concept plan, and I am going to go through this in more detail. Traffic signal timing, phasing, and coordination, that can happen pretty much irrespective of whether Charles River Road is relocated or modified in any way or not. The other things that are on this list, changes to lane use, accommodations for bikes and pedestrians, wayfinding, modifications to bus stops, improvement to safety, those types of changes really require more construction, more of a functional change from what you see every day. And as Councilor noted, this project was ranked #1 by the people who attended the final Arsenal Street Corridor Study public meeting as the project to move forward because it has so many components to it. So what are multimodal goals and objectives? What are we trying to do? And what we're trying to do is create shorter, more direct pedestrian crossings. I think everybody who was on our working group felt strongly that that needed to be incorporated. The folks on our working group from Perkins felt particularly strongly that that needs to be incorporated because they use the square as a classroom as well as in everyday life. Safer opportunities for bicyclists, a reduction in the illegal lane changes that you see, particularly on Galen Street, improvements of transit connectivity, and that's, better ability to transfer from the 70A to the 71 to the Watertown Yard, and at least be able to see the bus or see the bus stop you're trying to transfer to when you get off the bus, so you know if you have to run to catch it or you have 10 minutes to get a coffee. And improving traffic flow to encourage vehicles and to stay on the primary roads. And I think that's important. So that's not making traffic better through the square. I would probably not be telling the truth if I told you we were going to fix the traffic problems in the square. But that's trying to get people to stack more efficiently through all of the traffic signals. And it's not just Watertown Square, it's Nonantum Road, it's Arsenal Street and North Beacon Street, it's the Pleasant Street intersection, the Church Street intersection. Just being able to progress through all of the many intersections in a little bit of a better way so people stop using Waze and Google and their local knowledge of the area and they stay on the roads that they're supposed to be on because it's not such a barrier to them for getting through. And some of the other things that you get by making those changes is improved intersection safety, expanding open space and connectivity to the river, which we're going to talk more about, incorporating healthy community design features, which are all of the non-motorized transportation benefits I just spoke about, better connections to healthy food, shelters for transit, so you're more likely to use it during poor weather, those types of things, and reduced vehicle emissions, which come from shortening those queues, progressing traffic through better, making it so that you can get what we call a green band and actually progress through rather than having to stop at every intersection. So since our final study, Arsenal Street Corridor study, sorry about that, meeting, which was in the summer, we have been working to do a few things. We've further modified the concept plan that was provided in the study to start addressing some of the comments that the town had and that the town was receiving from others, to identify where other areas of study are further required. We've held coordination meetings with state agency stakeholders. Charles River Road is owned by DCR. MassDOT owns the bridge over the Arsenal Street corridor, or over the Charles at Galen Street. They also are doing the project at Nonantum Road, and the T has to be part of the conversation. We have both bus stops in the study area, and construction is probably going to affect the power of the catenary, so they need to understand how the busing would work if the 71 couldn't have catenary power. We've also, as been mentioned, we've developed a project website, and we've developed an email list for that website from all of the various other projects that have been going on in town. So getting to what everybody wants to know about, what's our plan? And I know that this might be hard to see from parts of the room, but there are boards in the hallway, and I'm going to step through it, and we can talk more about it afterwards as well. The plan is, first and foremost, we are coordinating with the MassDOT Safety Improvement Project, both in terms of traffic signal coordination and geometry coordination. So the southern part of the plan that leads towards Nonantum Road is kind of undefined right now and probably very subject to change depending on what happens with the other project. We are striping or proposing to stripe an on-road bike lane that you see highlighted in yellow on the screen, or if you can't see the yellow, there's a leader leading to it. We are recommending other bicycle improvements as well, but this is the only one at this time that is on-road. We are changing the lane designation of the Galen Street approach. And I think while we're doing more widespread wayfinding, this proposes, this approach would probably see the biggest wayfinding. It's the one where we saw the most illegal lane use. Modifying this geometry to help get people in the right lane going for the right direction, and also to help the backup of queue between Nonantum Road and Main Street, Arsenal Street, which, usually you have a really hard time getting there, and then once you get there, 2 of the lanes are empty. So what we're trying to do, like I said earlier, is just continue to stack everybody so that it's a little bit easier to progress through the intersection. As you can see in this, Charles River Road is relocated, so there are 4 options that we're considering for what that means, and I'm going to get into more detail on those in a moment. We're also looking at lane designation changes along Arsenal Street to provide 2 left turn lanes onto Galen Street. And that would either require removing or modifying the median that's there today. And whether you remove it or modify it sort of also depends on what happens on Charles River Road. So that is a design detail that would be worked out later. But for example, if you were going to have traffic exiting Riverside Street, you wouldn't want them to be able to turn left. So you would probably put the median in. If you're not having any traffic exiting Riverside Street, there's not really the need for the median, so we have an option to take it out. All of the ones that I just spoke about with the reallocation also shorten the pedestrian crossings along the crosswalks and the approach that they are crossing. And then because of the changes that we're making on Galen Street, we're able to remove the left turn lane on Mount Auburn Street, not the left turn lane, and have a different traffic signal timing and phasing on that approach. And what that does is it opens up some additional space, to be determined, possible for an expanded parking supply and additional parking in the square. It's possible to increase sidewalk widths if we do some of the transit connections we're considering, include a bike lane on the outbound side of Mount Auburn Street to tie into the Mount Auburn Street project. So those ideas will continue to be developed as we flesh out the concept. And then more general, potential relocation of bus stops. So there is, right where it says add a bike lane, that is the potential at the square area to relocate the 70 bus stop from the firehouse to the square, so that all you have to do is cross through the grass area to connect to the 71. Another option that we're considering is the far side, so having the 70 bus stop at Riverside Street. They could then cross Arsenal Street and get on the 71 at Mount Auburn Street. And the attractive thing about that is with Charles River Road relocated, they can also walk through the new open space that's created and connect to Watertown Yard, only having to cross Nonantum Road rather than also having to try to make their way across Galen Street. The relocation of Charles River Road increases open space quite significantly. Just the piece that would be reclaimed at the intersection is about 15,000 square feet. If you think about the existing, what used to be the old traffic circle where the lights are at Christmas time, that's a little over 24,000 square feet. So it's adding 2/3 of that section of open space to the existing parkland along Charles River Road. And then really looking at Arsenal Street and North Beacon Street, and we don't have any specific ideas here, but looking at Arsenal Street and North Beacon Street and figuring out what kind of reconstruction can be done there. That was not part of the Arsenal Street corridor study, but it became clear that part of keeping people on the primary roads also means looking at that intersection and looking at ways to get people through there a little easier, or at least better traffic signal timings through that area. So we also discussed, well, if you relocate Charles River Road, what does that mean for the neighborhood? And we had kind of established a study area, which is the area bound by yellow, which is pretty much Charles River Road and North Beacon Street from the square all the way to the Arsenal. looking at that whole neighborhood and figuring out what are the traffic implications of modifying Charles River Road. And that's not something that we did as the corridor study. That's something that's being recommended as a next step. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But I want to walk through the 4 concepts that we're going to be considering. And the first one is one-way eastbound along Charles River Road from Watertown Square to Wheeler Street. There are no driveways along that stretch, no other access that needs to be provided along that stretch. What it would do is it would eliminate cut-through traffic in the evening peak hour, which through observation and the data that we've collected so far seems to be the peak hour that has the most cut-through traffic. And how I'm defining that is through traffic. There's not an origin or a destination in that whole neighborhood that was bounded by yellow. They're simply using Charles River Road to go from North Beacon Street to Watertown Square without having to wait in the traffic signals on Arsenal Street or North Beacon Street. It's less impactful to the neighborhood when compared to some of the other alternatives because it still provides access to the neighborhood from the square. It just doesn't provide direct access from the neighborhood to the square via Charles River Road. It increases open space both along at the square and by the Founders Monument. It does require some driveway modifications, particularly between Wheeler Road and Thurston, where the road goes from 2 to 1 lane. And there's no change in direction on Riverside Street at all that's needed as part of this alternative. The next alternative that we're considering is making North Beacon Street one-way all the way to making Charles River Road, one-way all the way to North Beacon Street. And this is an option that came up through our discussion with DCR. Still does a lot of what Alternative 1 did in terms of eliminating cut-through traffic and impacts to the neighborhood, but it has such a bigger chance to really change the space and the open space that's used. The DCR would consider making modifications to the bike path along Charles River Road, really starting to reclaim the river there and providing recreational use along the roadway. Alternative 3 goes back to the section between Wheeler and the square, but it looks at making it one way in the other direction. So in a lot of ways, cut-through traffic as it's been defined would be eliminated because once you got to the square, you'd only be able to make a right turn. So there's no reason or need for anybody other than people destined to the neighborhood to use Charles River Road. If they're coming westbound, they cannot come. If they're coming eastbound, they're just basically going to get into a circle. I'm sure people will try it if this option were to be constructed, but the first time they did, they'd go up Wheeler, they'd get pushed to Riverside to the right, they would kind of be in a circle. So it eliminates the cut-through traffic. It's the most impactful to the neighborhood, though, because there's no direct access to or from the square. You have to use other streets in your neighborhood to get to and from North Beacon Street or Arsenal Street to get to the square. There's not likely to be any driveway modifications for this because most of the roadway remains two-way. And as it narrows to 1, it's the side of the road that has the driveways that is maintained. But it does require reversing direction on Riverside Street. And then the final option is a two-way Charles River Road, having the whole road be two-way, but once you get to the square, combining it with Riverside Street, but you're only allowed to take a right turn out again. So again, if you're headed eastbound, you will have access from the square. Headed westbound, you will have only right turn access. So this addresses the cut-through traffic problem in the evening. It's similar to the one-way eastbound alternative, not as impactful for the neighbors. It has the least increase in open space because it uses the widest roadway. Not any modifications to driveways are not required, but Riverside would be a two-way road in this option, although Charles River Road would be discontinued for the portion between Wheeler and the square. So this is just a summary of everything I just said, and the reason why I'm popping it up is because over time, once we start collecting additional data, the things will go from less impactful, more impactful, increase, greatest increase, to some quantifiable numbers so that you can see the differences between the different alternatives. And then, so how do we figure this out? So the first thing that we're recommending is an origin destination study, which is a collection of partial license plate data at 4 locations in the neighborhood: Charles River Road at North Beacon Street, Irving Street, Watertown Square, and Irving at North Beacon. And that's not to say that this analysis is limited to those locations, but really understanding who doesn't belong in the neighborhood. If they pass through any of those points within a reasonable amount of time, they're not coming to the neighborhood. So we're able to identify who we're trying to get out and who we're trying to keep in terms of peak hour travel. So getting license plate surveys at those locations, figuring out the origins and the destinations of travel, and then using the data to understand what all of the different design alternatives, what the implications of all the different design alternatives would have. This is a little bit tricky because you may have noticed some utility work going on Louise Street and Beechwood. And my understanding is that once Eversource is done, National Grid is going to begin. So we are thinking late spring 2018 will be a window of period. We have to let people kind of figure out their old travel patterns again. So we're probably talking about late spring, early summer before we're able to do this analysis. But this is an important step to get to a resolution on what we would recommend along Charles River Road. And then addressing the neighborhood impacts. So identifying from that data and the other data that we collect or have collected previously, what intersections within the neighborhood are affected. Do we believe that those impacts are short-term, meaning during construction, or just after construction as people realize there's no access to the square? Or are they long-term and a sustained change in the travel pattern? And then developing solutions that would mitigate those and having an ongoing dialogue to make sure that we didn't miss anything in our analysis. And that includes considering new one-way streets, that includes changing directions of streets, and then continuing to work with DCR, depending on what option is chosen, on the recreational opportunities along the river. So, given everything that we know and everything that we've talked about so far, our recommendation would be to proceed with the Watertown Square multimodal improvements by considering access to Charles River Road. Complete the origin destination survey, consider all the comments that we hear tonight, and you can, we've got emails, we've got people around the room, you're going to have the opportunity to speak. I'm going to have a slide about all the other ways you can submit your comments. Perform the detailed analysis of all the Charles River Road options, the impacts to the adjacent neighborhoods or the benefit to the adjacent neighborhoods, how those impacts change what we might recommend on the Arsenal Street approach or the departure along Mount Auburn Street, and also considering a potential pilot program. And the reason why we say consider is because depending on what are the 4 alternatives we want to test, they may or may not be able to be constructed in the field, given that Charles River Road and Riverside Street are separated by a median today and Charles River Road is signalized. So to force people, if you're testing a westbound alternative, to force people to go to the traffic light at Charles River Road and only make a right turn when they have the green light is going to be extremely difficult to do in a test scenario. If you're trying to test some of the eastbound only alternatives, we can close the westbound Charles River Road approach and just let people filter in the other direction. So pilot program is on the table. We won't really be able to talk about that specifically until we know what alternatives we're fleshing out. In terms of schedule, as Councilor Dushku mentioned, we're leveraging multiple funding sources, which kind of changes our schedule. We're hoping to finalize the concepts and select a preferred alternative sometime next summer 2018. Design and permitting would occur from the fall through the spring of 2019, and these are rough dates, and they are subject to change. Prepared bid documents in the summer of 2019, and then begin construction by the spring of 2020. So in addition to providing your comments tonight, these are all the other ways that you can participate. Most of them require emailing us or going to our website, looking for notification of future meetings. But again, given the constraints we have with the utility construction and the time we're going to have to do our origin and destination survey, it's going to seem like we went away for a long time. And that's not because we're not making progress. It's just that, internally, we've kind of felt like at the next meeting that we have to bring all of you out again, we should have some answers to the questions about origin, destination, and impacts of the different alternatives. And unfortunately, we won't have those until sometime, hopefully early summer. But if you sign up for emails from our website, I think there will be other things that we'll be updating people on as we go, and you'll be getting regular updates and be able to check progress that way. So I'm going to stop talking. We welcome all comments and questions and concerns. I've put a couple of bullet points up on the screen. If you're not sure what your comment wants to be, or you're not sure how you can be helpful to us, there are specific pieces of information that we're looking for to help us move forward. And that's additional data or analysis that we should be considering. Design elements to evaluate if you've thought of others, and then thoughts on the different Riverside options. But you can make any comments. I think those are just the ones that we're looking for in terms of constructive feedback.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, so we'll first do a little round with the committee here, and then we'll open it up. It is 10 past 7. That was a little musical interlude. Thank you. Put us all in the right frame of mind for a little kumbaya moment. So I'll open it up for my counselors here on the committee. I know that I saw you guys feverishly scribbling, so do you want to start us off, Tony, or?
Just a very basic question from the very beginning, and maybe it's in the Arsenal study, Arsenal Street corridor study. You say that the goal of improving multimodal access could not be done without modifications, so that the other 4 streets that roll in there, nothing, you could not change those in any way other than in order to meet the goal. There's only one street that can be changed in order to meet the goal of improving multimodal access. Is that what you're saying?
There are small changes that can be made among the other approaches. Most of them are timing and coordination changes. You may be able to move a few crosswalks to make them a few feet shorter. But when we started looking at how you would change the lane geometry, and then how that would require the traffic signal to change, and how we're not trying to make things better for traffic, but we're also not trying to make things worse for traffic. So when you start thinking about the balance and what needs to happen, you really do start talking about a major change, and not taking out a leg, but changing how one of the legs operates, and making it so that you can still hold your cycle length for the traffic signal. It's really important for pedestrians especially not to make the cycle lengths longer, because they have to wait longer to cross the street, and a lot of them, if they can, will not wait and will jaywalk. So, in a lot of ways, Charles River Road is our best option, because it does provide quite a bit of time, more time than it needs to process the cars, because there's pedestrians that are processed during the same time. And that was the most efficient way we found, especially when you're talking about the change in geometry on Galen Street, so today there's 2 lefts. There's the through to Mount Auburn Street, and then there's the through to Mount Auburn Street, which is also a right to either Charles River Road or Arsenal Street. And anybody who drives through there on a regular basis knows people go through from the left turn lane, and they go right from the through lane to Mount Auburn Street, and a lot of times there's someone in that right lane who's correctly going through. So to change that geometry, you need to split the cycle phase. So the Galen Street approach has green time when nobody else does, and then the Mount Auburn Street approach has green time when nobody else does. Legally, that's how the traffic signal would have to operate, and you need more time to do that. So we looked at taking time incrementally from all of the approaches, and it just didn't get us there. So we looked at what happens if you discontinue other approaches, but the magnitude of the traffic on those approaches has a much bigger effect on how they would divert to go around the square.
Take turns.
Okay, none of this is intuitive for me. It's very hard to follow, and I admire the people who can visualize the impacts of this, so I'm really looking forward to hearing from a lot of people. I have 2 points. One, the license plate study, that made me really nervous. And you can figure out where people live, but you don't know where they work. And what about privacy concerns?
So we never see the license plates. So old school, we used to actually send people out in the field, and they would collect partial plate data, and then we would bring it back to the office and put it all in Excel and match it through that. We don't do that anymore. It's very time-consuming. There are a lot of privacy concerns. So we have, it's a computer program that runs through cameras. It uses a fisheye lens, so a person could never see what the license plate says. And then it matches the license plates, specific paths that you tell it to match. It will give you the number of cars that are on all of those paths at any time. But only partial plate data is collected, and it never gets out of the computer software, so it never gets released to anybody.
Well, is it collected and matched to your address?
No, it's just looked at, so if
The
you're,
patterns.
if the first 3 digits of your license plate are 123, and you turn left from North Beacon Street to School Street, for the next 3 to 5 minutes, it looks to see if 123 comes out of Irving Street or out of Charles River Road into the square.
Does it look to see how often I do that?
No.
Like, do I do it every day or just once?
Well, we would only do a limited data collection, probably limited to 2 or 3 days, but it would just tell me, of the 350 cars that turn left,
Where are they
110
going?
of them went this way. It doesn't tell you any detailed information about the car.
And then I had, when you were going through this page about the many modifications that you were looking at, you said something really quickly that I was like a few beats behind about, so you wait a long time and then you finally cross and then you find there's nobody in the lanes at the other side. I think it was Arsenal Street or North Beacon. Do you know what I'm referring to? Does anybody?
I think, yeah, so the progression of.
I got it about Galen Street. I got all the problems with Galen Street. But was there someplace else you talked about a problem?
I don't think, so the 2 biggest issues from a stacking and being able to progress are Galen Street, and that's the one where, at Nonantum Road, those 2 lanes going up to the square could be full. But when you get to the square, there's 3 empty lanes and there's 1 lane that's backing up all the traffic. The other one where that happens a lot is actually North Beacon Street and Arsenal Street, where the queue to turn left, especially in the evening from Arsenal Street to Galen Street, goes back so far, people block the intersection. If you're on North Beacon Street, you can't really get in. And that is causing people to use Charles River Road as a way to get to the
I'm
square.
often there midday, and you have to wait a few light cycles. That really is, I can't, if you're saying it's good midday and worse in the evening, I
No.
can't imagine.
No, it's not that bad in the morning if you're headed in that direction, but it very slowly builds from the midday all the way through the evening commute and into the after hours on that approach.
Thanks.
Sure.
I got a question, just a couple of brief things. I think that we're going to hear a lot from the people in the neighborhood, and I really think it's important to hear about the testing that you're going to do over the next year, and that's going to probably put a lot of people in the room at ease or the opposite. So, that's really the focus. When it comes down to looking at some of the other elements of the square, I've always had it in my mind that I thought it would be really lovely especially if we're going to be adding a ton of open space on the other side of, I guess it's Galen Street on the north side of the river, to do something a little bit more friendly for the pedestrian on the old grassy area over there near where the bus stops are. I could envision like a little plaza, some more seating, something kind of, I see people cutting through there all the time. So it would be kind of it might be a fun place for people to stop and actually enjoy the area a little bit more. So I just wanted to put a place mark in. And then for that, looking at that same area, I see that you're putting a bike path, you're proposing a bike path there kind of near where the new bus stop could be, where cars are turning right. It would be nice for, sometimes people are riding up from kind of Church Street or Main Street or even Pleasant Street if they didn't already take the river path, and they're heading over to the yard, so they're crossing over where the buses are. So instead of riding on the sidewalk there, maybe some sort of bike way through that part to the bridge. You can't make the bridge any wider, so they're still going to have to navigate that tough sidewalk when they get over. And the last one was in that area, there, that bus and taxi area there also. We're working pretty hard to get a pilot shuttle program started with the Transportation Management Association. So they'll likely be coming up Pleasant Street or in the neighborhood, so to plan for some sort of berthing system for them to be able to bring their buses in. It's minor compared to what's going on in the neighborhood, but those are mine. I really want to hear what everybody else has to say.
I'd like to hear from the community, too. I'm ready to go.
All right, so should we turn it over to Nancy to start the public forum? She'll kind of moderate that. She's with Regina Villa, and she's a professional mediator, and don't mess with her. So, seriously though, it's 7:20, and everybody in the room probably wants to talk. So if someone's already said what you've said, you know, maybe you don't need to repeat it. You can just say ditto to that or something like that, or maybe you can just listen, and please keep your comments brief.
Thank you, Counselor, and thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. We really appreciate it. Laura, I'm sure you're going to get dragged back to answer a few questions. Okay, all right. So first, I want to tell everyone that we're going to post this presentation on the website. These little sheets of paper have the website names, so please be sure to take one, or just Google us, because you'll find us, and there are more comment sheets up here. The sign-in sheet, where is it? Has it made it to this side of the room yet? Okay, all right.
Keep it moving.
Okay, we'll keep it moving, and if it doesn't come to you, please ask that question.
Nancy, a quick request. Could you also email me the slides so they can be attached to the minutes that
Of
I write?
course,
Thanks.
of course. And we are taking notes. We have many people taking notes, so we will do summary notes of the comments, maybe not every word you say, but as much of the intent of your question or statement as we can. And in the next few weeks or months, if you email us with a comment, if what you submit is a comment, we will probably just acknowledge it and thank you. But if you submit questions, we'll do our best to answer them as promptly as we can. We consult with the town, we provide the answer, and we get it back to you in whatever, as short a period of time as we can. So, as the council mentioned, I know a lot of people want to speak. I will ask you to try to keep your comments to 2 or 3 minutes. I'll let you know when that time period is up. I assure you that we are going to meet again in a more friendly atmosphere for seating and temperature and everything else when we have the data that Laura was talking about. I will also ask you to step to the podium because the event's being recorded, so if you want to be heard. With no further ado, the first person who raises their hand right now, gentleman in green, would you tell us your name, please? And I'll give you about 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay, very good. I'm Steve O'Reilly from Wheeler Lane. Wheeler Lane's been mentioned a number of times tonight. I think it's going to be a while before they do a testing, but Wheeler Lane has no sidewalks, and that should be known. When you enter Wheeler Lane from Charles River Road, it immediately takes a turn to the left, and then you go down Wheeler Lane, and then you go up a hill around a turn, and then there are very poor sight lines on Riverside. So as part of this, we need sidewalks. If we're going to be a test area, we need sidewalks.
Okay,
And that's my main objective.
that's a good
right now.
request. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, gentleman behind you, go ahead.
David J. of 360 Charles River Road. To state the obvious, if traffic is forced to the right at the end of Charles River Road, there will be a strong desire to make a U-turn back into the square, passing through the gas station or something. Maybe there's a small chance that could be accommodated, but otherwise, I don't think too many people would be happy going all the way up to Irving and coming around.
All right, great, thank you. I love these brief comments. Lady in blue?
Carlene Loveday, representing me and my husband Mohit, who is home with the kids. We're on Riverside Street, so we're very affected by that study area that was in the yellow highlights. I'm really comforted by hearing where we are in the process. There was certainly a lot of hearsay about degree of decision-making, and so I'm comforted to hear that this is a process. This is one that I've been through before with the DCR as an author on some beaches studies, so I kind of get how this is going to unfold, and I'm sorry you'll be looking at all the Post-it notes that you're going to be looking at. The information flow would really be helpful. I don't know who flyered our neighborhood with notices about the meeting, but that's really, really helpful to have a number of ways to be alerted to when meetings are happening and what the agenda items are. My particular interest is in maintaining the flavor of the neighborhood. Our block and the blocks on either side have a lot of little kids who play a lot outside, and we sort of have a reduced speed of traffic with the change to the parking lot from a couple of years ago. So having that corner of Irving and Riverside in my case, but the neighboring streets, Royal and Priest and Thurston, having those be quiet is really helpful. But also being able to get out when you need to get out and access the square and other points of egress is important. And also making sure, I mean, the key point for me is making sure that we don't have a lot of unnecessary extra traffic on Irving, Royal, and others. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Gentleman right there? Oh. That feels great.
My name is Peter Daltredici. I live at the corner of Riverside and Irving Street, and I want to commend the traffic study because I think that I've been watching the traffic slowly building on Charles River Road over the past few years, particularly in association with all the construction happening on Arsenal Street, that people are looking for a way of avoiding the congestion on North Beacon and on Arsenal Street. And I think that the idea of at least partially closing Charles River Road, because if something doesn't happen, there's just going to be more and more traffic on Charles River Road, and its function as a open space is going to be severely diminished. I would make one minor suggestion, though, is that the little jog that they're proposing, if you were to, dead end Charles River Road in the square, I think that you could, if you brought Riverside Street, as opposed to going all the way to Wheeler Road, if you just took a little jog and connected it right back to Charles River Road, you could then access Charles River Road from the square, essentially, in that direction. So in other words, as opposed to going all the way down to Wheeler Road, just cut it off. There's nothing there but a little sidewalk right before you get to the monument. But that's just my only suggestion.
Laura, do you want to answer that one?
Okay.
Sorry if I wasn't clear about that. So we are pretty much proposing that. The road would be Charles River Road almost all the way to where Riverside is today, and we'd just be cutting through the median between Riverside and Charles River Road to connect them. The construction to do that would go all the way probably to Thurston, depending on what option gets developed, because there are driveways right on Charles River Road between Thurston and Wheeler, and then there's one in Wheeler that kind of comes right into the middle of the intersection. So those are all locations that we have to look at, and we might need to do some reconstruction. But Charles River Road would remain one-way or two-way on its existing path, about almost all the way about where the condos are, and then cut through the median and connect to Riverside there.
Yes, gentleman back there? And then,
Hi, Dan Driscoll. I've lost my voice, so you have to bear with me, DCR. DCR first heard about this proposal ourselves just recently, and we're really excited about it. We think there's a lot of great opportunities. Obviously, the devil's in all the details to be uncovered still. But I just want to mention that on Charles River Road, despite the fact that it has 2 bike lanes and it has a sidewalk and the new path along the river, it's still relatively dysfunctional for cycling. You don't really want to be on the sidewalk. If you're there with young kids, you don't want to be on the bike path on the road. The bike path that goes from east to west I equate it to a black diamond ski run. It's not comfortable at all, even for an advanced cyclist. And so I'll take both credit and blame for bringing up that scheme that showed it being a one-way street the whole way. Because we're always looking for opportunities for road dieting and potentially turning a bunch of that road back into the parkland. So I had this idea, thinking about this, that if that could happen and it wasn't, going to be unfairly burdensome to the neighborhoods, there's an opportunity there where you could actually have a grade-separated two-way cycle track adjacent to a sidewalk, and then the pathway all restored along the river, which would make it an outstanding facility for families biking and for everyone else out there using the river. And it would connect a loop where you could go from the square all the way back down Nonanum Road. And Nonanum Road, I mean, it's not like we haven't done this recently. Nonanum Road, we took up a full lane of traffic and added it to the park and transformed it, as everybody knows, to make it safe for all users along the river. We also just recently did Greeno Boulevard, which has been an outstanding transformation where there wasn't even a path or sidewalk, and now there's this great multi-use facility that goes the full length from the Elliott Bridge to Arsenal Street. And as part of the IQ project, Athena is committed to doing Little Greeno, where there will also be a grade-separated cycle track and a safe facility for pedestrians. So Charles River Road has an opportunity here, and I think even if it's two-way, we could start looking at eliminating the parking lane or taking the bike lanes out and just widening the entire sidewalk into the road. But that's the thing we're really excited about. I think also that in the square itself, to have a prominent park as part of Watertown Square, featuring the river, which is really the cherished resource of this community, would be outstanding. So to picture a larger park around the landing that was really a public space, and I like the comment too of doing something near the bus area, because that's really the main entrance to the river walk along the Charles. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Lady that, see you, right there. You had your hand up, right here? No? Okay, right there then. Yeah, thanks.
Following up on that, name's Jeannie Johnston.
Hi, Jeannie.
Is that in areas that we restore to make new parkland, we need to restore the soils underneath it and not just slap a few inches of rubble over existing pavement, because you can't plant a tree in that. And we've got portions even of the Delta that still have old pavement that's never been restored, and there are a couple of trees in there that have been languishing for years because they need the soil restored at depth. So that needs to be considered in all the planning, and as sidewalks are widened, that gives opportunity for some good, large-sized tree pits to make large trees, and not a whole row of small trees in small tree pits that never do anything. Make it fewer trees, but larger ones, and generous tree pits with the soil well prepared underneath it.
Thank you, thank you. I'll take this gentleman, and then you're going to be next.
My daughter is 10 minutes in her contraction, so this was important.
Well,
But this was important to
hurry
come
up.
here. It's our second
Hurry up.
grandchild. Her name is Josephine. You'll be hearing me
probably watching
screaming
right
within
now.
an hour. I'm sure she'll be going through this, yes. So, just really three things. One, very quickly,
tell us your name, please.
my name is Fred Sullivan. I
Thank
live
you,
in Mount
Fred.
Auburn Street,
Okay.
on the corner of Mount Auburn and Irving Street.
Okay.
I think we all know that Watertown is going through a renaissance right now. So we're seeing this incredible bustle of buildings being built and all that. So the caution, I think, is really not about, I know it's multimodal transportation is the goal. And it doesn't affect it positively in traffic, because the traffic will still be there through the square. The challenge is it going to affect it adversely? And that's really, it's not to say it will, but that's obviously the challenge. And just a couple of quick observations. It's interesting to know, I read the master plan, believe it or not. It's 212 pages. Everyone should read it if they get a chance. It's actually very, very well done. A couple interesting points to note. Galen Street had 9 injuries on it last year. Irving Street had corner of Irving and Mount Auburn Street had 9 injuries on it last year. The traffic going through Galen Street is massively larger. So there's something going on in Irving Street. There's something going on when you walk down the sidewalk of Dunkin' Donuts and the lights go green and you happen to be in the sidewalk. And people are almost getting hit there. There's a lot going on in Irving Street towards Charles River Road where you don't have a stop sign with the Perkins Street. So I cut through to Charles River Road because I know it's the easiest way to get to the street. I love the idea of open space. I love the idea of bringing that, what's the name of the Founders Monument? We should bring it down there and let everyone see it rather than have it hiding where it is. But I just want to be certain that we don't approach it too much in a stovepipe, that we see that there's something else going on here, and that is there's an enormous population growth, there's enormous business growth, and the last thing we need is to make it worse. And that's my comment, anyways. And I'm going to go.
Best of luck to Josephine.
I'm going to go participate in my daughter. Thank you.
Good luck. Good luck. All right.
Hi. My name is Joan Blaustein. I live at 8 Riverside Street. I've lived there 32 years, so I'm an experienced jaywalker. I don't think I've ever, there's some lights I will not wait for, and some I do. So it can be done, but it takes a lot of patience to cross completely across the square. Encourage. Two things I'd like to see. I'm with Councilor Falcoff when she says it's hard to look at the diagrams and get a feel for what's actually being proposed. Is there any possibility of holding one or more site walks that people could gather, walk through, and get make sure that everybody's understanding what the diagrams are showing?
Laura's nodding, so I would say yes.
Okay, great. And I also hope, I assume, because the town's pretty up to speed on stormwater, but that whatever improvements we make along the river will be state-of-the-art with stormwater management. And I agree that the river is the Watertown's biggest asset, and we need to do whatever we can to enhance that. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Let's see. Anyone over here? Because I haven't gone over here. Yes. Yes, you have to, I'm sorry. I wasn't ignoring you, councilors, in this corner, but I thought I'd let the neighbors jump in first, so forgive me.
My name is Jim O'Keefe, and I live at the corner of Irving Street and North Beacon. My concern here is when we talk about cut-throughs on Irving Street, is that it already kind of feels like it's a racetrack. From the time that the signal turns on North Beacon Street, people are racing to either go up North Beacon or down Irving Street towards Charles River Road. And like my friend Carlene said, there are plenty of kids who live in that area. I have two, and I can probably count on none of my hands how many I know. So my main concern is for the safety of my neighbors. The corner of Riverside and Irving Street is a one-way stop sign. So Riverside has no stop sign. And there are plenty of times that people will go through the stop sign thinking that it's a four-way. So my suggestion would be some sort of speed enforcement, ways to reduce speed of people going down Irving Street if we tend to go this way. Speed humps, because when my windows are open, I can hear a lot of things going, a lot of engines running, a lot of engines racing. And my worst fear is that my children or one of my friends' children will get hurt.
Would you tell me again, where do you live?
Corner of Irving and North Beacon Street.
And you're saying that people speed down Irving to get to Charles? Is that what you're
Absolutely.
Well,
It sounds like a drag race some of these days.
can I chime in on that, too? That light is so short that if you blink your eyes, it's
Right.
gone. And so I think that's what encourages people to go fast,
Right.
because they don't have a long time to make.
And my other observation, too, is that with the new construction that has gone on Arsenal Street and people coming down Irving Street towards Charles River Road, that short space in between Arsenal and North Beacon Street, the light is so short that traffic is getting backed up onto North Beacon Street. And so people at rush hour, they rush and they try to get through. They'll go through the light. It's just an absolute mess. I can't get off my street in the morning to go to work, and sometimes I wait 5 minutes at that light. So that light needs major observation.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to take this lady over here, and then the gentleman in the yellow shirt and the lady in the brown.
You can take the
black?
lady, then I'll go after.
Okay, all right, okay. And thank you, everyone, for being brief, because we're getting to hear a lot of opinions.
I'm Karen Larson. I live on the corner of Irving and Fifield Street, which is the little tiny street 1 block up from Charles River Road. I just want to point out on that map where the big yellow semicircle is over there, that the space between Perkins School, our great neighbors down the end of my street, and the square is hugely impacted by a lot of people from outside of our neighborhood. You know, everything that happens on North Beacon, everything that happens on Arsenal, everything that happens on Charles River Road, certainly some of the traffic is our neighbors, but a lot of it is not. And everyone here knows how much the traffic on Irving has increased. Riverside Street is my big concern today because it's the only street in our neighborhood that's kind of our neighborhood street anymore. And a change in traffic pattern there could be really devastating. There are a lot of young children. The face of our neighborhood has changed completely recently. A lot of people are dying, selling their houses, and much younger families are moving in. It's a lovely thing in our neighborhood. But for those of us who commute, and that's many people in our neighborhood, Riverside is the only street that we can walk down that is a safe and pleasant street to walk down because it is not the most highly trafficked street. Irving is about the same size. Anybody who drives down Irving knows you have to play Dodge car to get down the street. You cannot drive down that street in a straight line, and you can't do it on Riverside either because of all the traffic. If one car has to let the other car pass by with parking and stuff like that. But at least the traffic is not so fast on Riverside, and it's a pleasant neighborhood. It's not pretty to walk down Irving anymore. It's not safe to walk down Charles River Road sometimes. And I hope that whatever changes we make that are going to benefit primarily people from outside of our neighborhood, but some people in our neighborhood, is going to take into account the fact that we are a neighborhood and not just a traffic byway. And I'd like to see you touch Riverside as little as is possible.
Thank you, thank you.
Hi, I'm Becky Vercoloni. I live in Watertown, but I'm a long-time teacher at Perkins School for the Blind. And my way to work, to and from, is Irving. And I walk that, and I find that it's almost safer to walk than drive because they have the lights synced so you can go across Arsenal onto North Beacon. The problem is someone like me who pushes the crosswalk. And so what happens is all the cars back up on Irving. Now people are starting to come through my neighborhood. I live on Franklin Street. Then you can't get through the little space between Arsenal and North Beacon, and people are running the lights, and they're also backing up on North Beacon to get a right onto Irving to get into the square. So that intersection has to be somehow changed to make it safer for people who walk. We have a lot of people that are visually impaired that come that way too, and I find it very unsafe for walking with my students. The other thing is, I don't know if anybody knows this, but there's a Braille trail that's being developed right at the end of, I guess it's Irving over the Charles River. And I'm not sure, I was just there for photo shoot because they're doing phase 2. So when we were talking about changing the bike lanes and everything, I don't know who you talked to about the phase 2 Braille trail, but they may have already had plans to do something because they're trying to make that whole area accessible to the school for the students.
Great.
So I just wanted to bring that out. And
Thank
also,
you.
someone dropped their coat and I'm holding it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
My name is Will Clifford, and she touched on much of what I wanted to say.
Okay.
The lights on North Beacon Street and Arsenal Street have been extended. So if you're going down Irving Street or coming the other way, you have to wait, and all because of the development on the Arsenal Street corridor. If you try to take a left on the Louise Street, I know I'm going far afield on this, but if you try to take a left on Louise Street coming from the eastern part of Arsenal Street, you can't, because those lights, now that Watertown traffic can go freely east on Arsenal Street, you can't get into Louise Street. So then the traffic backs up behind you because there's only one lane, and it's backed up from Louise Street to School Street. Now, that's kind of far afield, but
It is,
that's a
and
problem.
We've got some designs in place to tackle that problem.
Yeah,
That's
expand
a
it
little
back
off
to
the
4
track, though.
lanes. I don't like my neighborhood being screwed up. Now, I know there's going to be a bike lane coming down Irving Street. You got to be kidding me. I mean, there's unsighted people that walk that way, and we're increasing the traffic for bikes. How many people in Watertown have a bike? What do they contribute financially?
Quite a few
for the
in the
registration
room.
fee? There's not many people that own bikes, and we're doing all of this expensive construction for bikers? You got to be kidding me.
All right, thank you.
There's actually no bike lane on Irving Street.
So,
There's actually no bike lane on Irving Street planned.
okay, so
haven't
this
seen those
gentleman in the black and white shirt, and then this lady here. And then I'll go back to this side over here.
Hi, thank you. My name is Joe Panto. I live at 11 Ladd Street. And for a long time, for about 10 years, I lived on Pleasant Street. And we slowly saw the traffic get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse as you put up all the condos there. And I moved to Ladd Street because I'm one of the young families that moved into the area. We have 3 kids. We live there because we like the opportunity for our kids to be able to go outside without all this traffic. I find it hard to understand how any of these changes is not going to promote traffic through that neighborhood. It's going to change the makeup of the neighborhood. No matter if they're going left or they're going right or you have them going one way, it doesn't matter. It's going to change because people use technology to cut through our city, and they're going to get pushed through there through Google Maps or Waze or whatever it is, because it's going to be less traffic-y than getting stuck now on North Beacon, which is going to back up. So I think you need to really look at how this makeup it's going to change this neighborhood. It just really is. I also think you should really look at the bigger picture. Why is everyone going through Watertown Square? It's not because they're working or living in Watertown Square. We're a cut-through town. You have to look at ways to improve people getting around or through Watertown, whether that's people taking a left onto Watertown or California Street, fixes to Bridge Street, and other ways for people to get around rather than through Watertown Square, because they're not going to the neighborhoods here. They're cutting through to Cambridge, to Arlington, to wherever they may be going. I know I work in Watertown, and people come in from their businesses and they're using us to cut through. So something to think about. You got to look at the bigger
Could I
picture.
ask you a question? Have you seen any increased traffic down Ladd Street?
Oh, yeah. And I've been there 3 years, and it has completely gone up. And I agree with Jim, who said that the speed there is ridiculous. It's a neighborhood, and people are going 40, 50 miles an hour down those streets.
So they're going down Ladd Street to go to where? To Riverside?
They're cutting down to Charles, and I guarantee it's because they're stuck in traffic, and they're tired of it, and they're using either a mapping program or they just know that's the way to get to Charles River, and they're going to do the same no matter what happens here.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Could I ask
Laura?
Laura a question, please? Since our hearing. Laura, some of this license plate data you're picking up, are we going to get a sense of, since it doesn't provide us any information about who's coming, the question that was just raised, who's coming through to just go through as a,
It
or
does.
will it?
We were not planning on doing every street in the neighborhood. I mean, certainly it's open for discussion what streets we do, but it will. The intent of it is to capture the cars, the magnitude of the number of cars that are going through the neighborhood without stopping. So, if someone's on Ladd Street and they're using River Street or Thurston Street or some other street to get there, it doesn't capture them. So it doesn't capture your neighbors that might be cutting through your street in the least direct way, but it would capture me. If I were driving, if I were trying to go from my office at VHB to Watertown Square and Arsenal Street were backed up, so I went down Louise Street in North Beacon and took Charles River Road, but I didn't stop in the neighborhood for anything, it would capture me as a cut-through
More
person.
onto the question the gentleman raised, or the concern raised about Watertown Square being basically a cut-through, not to work in Watertown and not to live in Watertown, but to go through Watertown to get into Boston or to get into Cambridge. Is there any of that data going to help us figure that out?
It will help us figure it out a little bit. I mean, not the ultimate destination, because we're really limited to the areas that we're surveying, so I won't be able to know without capturing full license plate data and asking, contracting with the RMV to process it, I won't be able to know where their final destination is. And it's complicated because Route 16 is a state numbered route that provides, its purpose is to provide connectivity to other communities. Arsenal Street has become a bit of a commuter route as well to Brighton, but 5 of the major employers in town are along the Arsenal Street corridor. So I agree, there are a lot of people going through, but it is also a major destination. One of the options that we looked at was taking the 4-lane section of Arsenal Street and narrowing it to a 2-lane section. And what we figured out was there's too many people who are destined, because there's so many major employers right there. There's too many people who are destined there to be able to make something work. So it's a little bit of both. Our data that we're capturing certainly will help figure that out in terms of the neighborhood, but not the larger scale commuting pattern
Is
through
there
the
any
town.
way that this question can be given it validity or not validity? There is a lot of just nodding of heads and
Sure.
clapping of hands to say that, yes, this is a problem.
There's census data that we can use. They have, it's not, a long time ago, it used to be the long form of the census. So you would be stuck with using whatever the last census is. Now it's a rolling census, a rolling year of 5 years. It's called the American Commuter Survey. It's run by the US Census Bureau. There's that kind of data, so we can look at pairs, Newton to Cambridge, Newton to Watertown, Waltham to Boston, and when you get into Boston, you can look at the different neighborhoods, so you can focus on Allston and Brighton. And we could get some larger pictures of who might be using the square as a commuter. Like if you look at all the towns around us and who's connecting between those 2 towns, to get a picture of who might be, but it would be more anecdotal. It's real numbers, they are based off of real data, but it would be somewhat anecdotal to try to say who is actually using the Watertown streets.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Laura. This lady and then the gentleman right there, and then I'll go over here.
My name's Patricia Geller. I've lived 32 years on Irving Park and Royal Street. Thank goodness I'm on that end of Irving Park because people speed down Irving Street. I've seen it get worse and worse and worse. It's a lovely neighborhood. It's full of dogs and children, and it's become a very unsafe neighborhood, and nobody's talking about a major development that's going on Irving Street and Arsenal Street. So how are you going to deal with those people? I don't know how many cars are coming with that development, but that needs to be taken into account too, because we're suddenly going to get another huge influx of drivers, and it's already unsafe. I leave my house at 6:30 in the morning to go to work because it's the only way I can get across North Beacon and Arsenal Street. So the planning needs to include all the building that you've allowed to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I see where our sign-in sheet is? Is it moving around somewhere?
It's here.
Oh, terrific. All right, Terry. And this side hasn't. So when this row's done, let's make sure it gets over here. If you are already in the database, if you got an email about this meeting, we want you to sign in, but you don't have to. Okay. We could just pass around a pad
Just
of
don't let it
paper.
don't let it stay with you. If you get it, keep it moving.
Yeah. All right, I'll check again in a couple of minutes. Sir, go ahead, please.
How you doing? My name is Troy LaFave. I live over on 124 Riverside Street. A lot of people have already addressed some of the things that we talked about, the makeup of the neighborhood. Children, families, elderly, I don't think was touched on, our Perkins community. Teachers from Perkins, the students. Right now, the makeup of the streets, I think, was touched on, how there's cars for residents already there, commuters, employees for Perkins, which is fine. This is great. We have people that stop and commute. We'll walk over and grab a bus somewhere. So it's not uncommon, as of today, just on a quiet day, to stop while traffic is coming towards you on Riverside to allow that to come through before you can proceed. So as of today, somebody else already talked about the current traffic problems, how it's increased, the speeding, rolling through stop signs, the corner of Irving and Riverside. It's actually a surprise that it wasn't, it's a surprise. It's a surprise to people. I just wrote it down. I just assumed it would be something that was common knowledge. The road narrowed by parking, we talked. Difficulty, when someone else mentioned, difficulty taking left on any of those streets. North Beacon, difficulty crossing North Beacon from Irving. Difficulty taking a left on Arsenal as far down as where O'Reilly Auto Parts is. Sometimes I'll go down that way to get to Arsenal so that I can take a left. Congested coming down Arsenal just through that one lane. So right now, as of today, as the traffic is of today on a typical, could be a Saturday. It doesn't necessarily have to be on commuting at this time. But as you see the commuting hours increase, get into that pocket, that window, you see a lot of rolling through stop signs, you see a lot more speeding, you see a lot more looking one way, going. So you really got to be really careful of what you're doing when you're in that neighborhood. Claims from the study, though, well, before I get to the first time I heard the 4 option was tonight. And if I understand it correctly, if I'm not sure if I do, all 4 options, none of them allow you to go Main Street, Galen Street, or Mount Auburn. Is that true?
We'll let Laura answer, because I might give you the wrong answer.
Yeah, I may be misinformed. Yeah.
So, from Charles River Road?
Charles River Road.
Correct. So, and that's one of the ways that we were responding to the comment of cut-through traffic in Charles River Road. So you can get from the square into Charles River Road, but the options that we have to exit into the square would basically send you to the east.
Okay. So my only concern is all those options just simply it seems to result in one thing. It pushes the traffic to North Beacon, and from North Beacon, it has to merge into Arsenal. So even though we talk about Riverside and that neighborhood being impacted, which it is, I still think it's going to bleed into the other neighborhoods and impact other neighborhoods because, as somebody who's on those streets, that if you want to avoid the square, get over to Main Street and cut around and come back down deeper into Main Street, those options are there, but you have to cut through all the neighborhoods. It won't be just Riverside, it's a neighborhood that will be impacted by this. I think it's going to go deeper. So. Let's see.
Okay, you're getting on 3 minutes here.
I know. I wish this forum was set in such a way that we could actually express everything that we needed to express.
Well, we look forward to seeing more comments in writing.
You can loop back after everyone's
that's
spoken,
that's
too.
one of my concerns. When you do comments in
that's
writing, there's no indication of how seriously these are taken.
We take them very seriously, and I know Matt, and I know the town, and the councilors take them all very seriously.
Okay, well, as long as, I hope so, because some of the claims that were being done into the, part of it was Riverside being impacted. It's not the only one being impacted. Of those 4 options, it is just another type of way of blocking off access to the square. It talks about, it makes claims for alternative ways to commuting, promoting that, which is a wonderful promotion.
Right.
However, I think if you bike now, you will continue to bike. Your experience might get better. If you commute by car, you will continue to commute by car, but your experience might be, become more congested. I don't think that with the changes that are made, and maybe I'll be wrong, that it will turn someone who's commuting by car to seek an alternative route because the environment has gotten so much better. I just think it's going to be, or it will do it in a volume as such to counter the effects that we're going to get from the congestion. So, if you bike now, you'll bike. If you don't bike now, you won't bike now. If you end up making that slight change, I don't think it'll be in the volume that will offset the problems that the congestion's going to bring. The proposed projects, somebody mentioned the projects that are currently going on, Irving, going down Arsenal. We got the Phase 3 that just got approved. I think it's difficult to understand. We're talking about all these studies happening based on traffic as of today or maybe in the near future. We've got a glut coming. We've got a glut coming from pre-approved projects that were already done, which I imagine, while they were being discussed, traffic is one of the top issues that come up.
Yeah.
So they proposed issues.
So
They
I'm going to
proposed
have to ask you to wind up, please, but I know Laura wants to address a couple of those points.
So just in terms of traffic volume, we are going to be doing a future conditions analysis that forecasts the traffic from all those developments. We did do that for the Arsenal Street corridor study, so some of it will come from that. But, as time goes on, things change. So we'll be looking at that as well. My sense is we're looking at 2040 traffic projections.
Would that be post after this is approved, or?
No, it's part of the project. So it's part of the alternatives analysis.
Laura, could you stay up there a second,
Yes.
please? So
2040, what Laura said was,
I think that we'll be going to 2040. That's consistent with the state's long-range transportation plan.
The gentleman's issue about, so if I'm going down Riverside, and I want to get over to Mount Auburn, how do I do that now?
It depends on what street you live on. If you are living on one of the parallel streets, you have access to Route 20 today. Your access would not be any different, so you would continue to use Route 20. If you're on Riverside, if you're using Charles River Road today, you would have to change your pattern to use one of the other streets that connects to Route 20. And depending on where you live on Riverside Street, it may be Irving, it may be Ladd, it may be, I'm not sure I know all of there's another one, Royal. Whichever one you live closest to, you're probably using to access Route 20. So
His point about pushing it east or further into other neighborhoods, can you just talk about that?
yes, and I think I disagree with it a little bit. I mean, we're looking at the whole neighborhood to try to capture those effects. We're also looking at people who don't have an origin or a destination in the neighborhood, right? So if you're living on one neighborhood street and you're using other neighborhood streets, you're not really a cut-through traffic person, so we're not going to capture that, but it certainly could start to create an issue if everybody's using one street. So we'll try to help with that. Our point is to try to get them to North Beacon Street, which is a US route, and to Arsenal Street, and improve the experience on both of those streets so that the east-west travel, the travel time is not as lengthy as it is today, even if you're waiting at the traffic lights. And I mean, when you're on Arsenal Street now, sometimes you're waiting at a red light and the light in front of you is green, and then as soon as you get the green light, the light in front of you turns red. So starting to change that experience so that, you know you're going to be in traffic, but you're not destined into the neighborhood to avoid traffic. So, I do think people will go the most direct route. So our challenge is not to make the most direct route through the neighborhood, to make the most direct route on the primary roads where they belong. And that's what we're going to try to analyze through our alternatives analysis.
I'll give you one wind-up sentence, okay?
Just one question.
Yeah.
Are there any other options other than the 4 that you're proposing?
I think it's open to discussion. I mean, those are the 4 that we came up with.
Yeah.
If people in the room have other options that they'd like us to consider, let us know, email us, put it on a sticky in the hallway. All of the comments that we get tonight get equal weight, whether you feel comfortable talking about them in public, whether you've had enough time to get through all of them. There's no waiting going on. We're going to take everything with the same as we move forward.
And we'll summarize the comments that we get. We'll let people know what everyone thinks, as to the extent that we can. I did another sign-in sheet that's going around here. It's a pad of paper. So only taking people who haven't asked a question. The lady in the back with a white shirt, and there was a gentleman over here in a blue shirt who was standing up looking. I guess maybe we lost him. Okay.
Hi, I'm Cabby Harvey. I live at the corner of Irving and Riverside, so I'm intimately familiar with the speeding. I personally do not have children, but my neighbors do. And I love the kids and I love watching them play. I do have a dog. Walking the dog is key. Dodging traffic is a pain.
Yeah.
I guess my question was, we talk about the iCube money. How is the funding going to happen, and is there going to be an issue with that funding, especially with Athena just laid off 500 people? Is that money committed so it can't be taken off the table if they have issues?
Mm-hmm.
My other concern would be that what happens if we get partially through this project and it stops? Where does the neighborhood stand there? And I just want to make sure that whatever solution we come up with is a solution that we can actually implement in a timely fashion, and that it doesn't drag on for years and it doesn't run out of funding and it's like, well, geez, guys, we've got everybody cutting through the neighborhood now and there's nothing we can do to remediate that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, and I really do appreciate the studies that have already occurred, and I look forward to seeing the traffic studies to understand, especially the traffic coming up Irving. And again, I'd like to put in a second vote for a raised intersection there for Irving and Riverside. Thanks.
Just about the iCubed, I think that obviously everybody's concerned about the uncertainty of what's going on in Athena. Say Athena dries up tomorrow, the town, right now, we're just in planning on this project here, so it hasn't started construction yet. I don't think there's any guarantees that we're going to get the money or that they're not going to dry up, but I know that no one sitting behind this table or no one sitting down at the DPW lot or in the planning department is going to leave a project half done. I mean, the town is not in such dire straits that they're going to leave streets dug up, and we can find the money to finish the project. Is there anyone else on the table here who wants to comment on that? I just don't see that happening. And obviously, we want the full 25 million, and it's dependent on Athena's staff's. It's the payroll taxes that their employees generate. So if they have less employees, there's less payroll taxes. Certainly, we're concerned with that. But this is the #1 project in the Arsenal Corridor working group meetings that's been ranked, and I think this falls pretty high on the priorities of the town council, as evidenced by how many people are here today and how many councilors are here today. I would rest a little bit easy that we're not going to run out of money on the project.
Can I comment on that?
Yes, comment.
My impression is that the money was nailed down, and even if Athena goes bankrupt, they've encumbered their buildings so that they're committed to doing it. And Councilor Piccirilli's shaking his head yes wildly.
The town manager escrowed $3 million plus.
Yeah, we made it safe for the town to make this deal.
Great. Who's next?
Lady over here in the green sweater has been waiting for a while, and then I'll take you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Elaine Gray. I'm a former zoning board member for 14 years and 3 years as chairman. And I live on Irving Street. I've been there for 60 years in the same house. 60 years.
16,
I've seen
really,
a lot
yes.
of changes. I brought my children up there, and it's a family house. It's 21 to 27 Irving Street, so it's a four-family. It is a raceway. Ditto on everybody that talked about racing. I do have some other, and it's problematic because there are a lot of accidents there. Across the street, we have a handicap house that has quite a number of people there. We do have people from Perkins and the blind that learn how to walk on that path there, and I'm always telling people to slow down. There's blind people here, and you're going to hit one of them one of these days. I've seen a lot of changes, what's going on down the street, and what you're doing here is admirable, to be able to have everybody give input to what happens in our neighborhoods. I love Riverside Street, the River Road. I love being able to access it. Irving Street, it's difficult to get in and out of our driveways. The traffic is terrible, terrible. It's exacerbated. But we've also experienced a lot of trouble in our neighborhood with the project down the street. I've never seen a rat in my life except maybe down the river. And we've had rats going incessantly through our neighborhoods and it's been really problematic the past 2 years. And it's nightmares
We'll
for
pass
my
that
neighbors.
one on. We will pass that one on for you.
Yeah.
Thanks. I just want to say, go on.
And also, the construction, we've had our foundations compromised. So we've had those kind of problems, and we want to see a solution on Irving Street that works. I haven't had a chance to look at all 4 plans. I'm getting on the email list. I want to be kept informed, and I hope we get solutions that help everybody, and particularly Irving Street, because it is exacerbated already.
Thank you.
Thanks. I just want to say that I don't think that the message about Irving Street is going to get missed by anybody here at this meeting tonight. I do want to, that project that everyone's talking about, they're not through yet. So I think there will be more tweaks on those lights, and I know there will be more tweaks on those light timings. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like when those cars start coming in and out of the different entrances and exits of that development there. There's several. So there's a garage even way up kind of by Toyota of Watertown on the Arsenal Street side. So I think that's kind of a work in progress, and I'm hearing, I think everybody hears, that it's a big concern, and we need to look carefully at that.
The garage on the corner of Irving Street, that was supposed to be a garage. What is it? It's just, is
On
it
the corner-
still a garage? It was part of the
That
plan.
development has multiple garages on site, so there's one
So-
on each end of the garage. I mean,
Okay.
each end of the development. There's one that will exit onto Irving, and there's one that, north of Arsenal, and there's one that will be on this little driveway that they're building, kind of between the Hanover project, up on Arsenal.
And
And
is-
then they have also a central exit too, that I think is more of a, kind of like a,
So from what I understand from Irving, in the plan that, when I worked with the committee, was entering from Irving, but not exiting from Irving.
okay.
That's what I recall. I don't know if that's
Right,
changed.
The point is that we don't know exactly how, we have some estimates, but we don't know exactly how it's going to impact the intersections, but we are very concerned about it, and we'll,
But negatively impacted.
well, it's already
so-
negatively impacted, so
I
we
know, I know. And is there also a marketplace going there still, or is that
It's
gone?
unclear.
That was the plan,
Okay,
so, between the two developments.
right. Doesn't look like there's space for it, I was wondering.
Thank you,
But
Elaine.
anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman right here in front, and then the lady in the plaid shirt, and this gentleman.
Good evening. Thank you very much for letting me have the microphone. Excuse me, please. My name is James Gleason. I live at Paul Street, which is not really why I'm here, because even though Louise Street is a nightmare right now, Paul Street is at such a pitch that everybody can't cut through there because their cars bottom out on the road, so that's kind of
That's one
pretty cool.
solution.
It kind of worked out for us, yeah, so.
We won't fix it.
You're a week late
my-
on this meeting.
My son and I watch and point, you know, so anyway. What I'm here to talk about, though, is my other fact that I work at the Perkins School for the Blind at the eastern corner of the campus by Fifield and Riverside. Now, what I want to mention tonight, just to have it said out loud, is that that end of campus, for better or for worse, is where those two roads terminate. And so the changes that I've seen tonight in almost all the plans are rerouting traffic in such a way that the business traffic of Perkins is going to have to come through all of these neighborhoods now. And while we certainly are not Amazon, there's a lot of traffic coming through to the loading dock on Fifield, but also up Riverside Street because of the parking lots for Perkins. There's two parking lots that flank the end of Riverside Street. Also, you have to be careful with some of these plans because the people who live at the end of Riverside Street, they can't get there from here. There's no way to cut through the campus. So you've got to be really careful with giving them a chance to get out of the neighborhood. So I'm not saying that it can't happen. It's just that I'm unclear as to with some of the options, how that might occur for somebody living at 139 Riverside Street. Anyway, thank you very much.
Well, I think, Laura, we can have that conversation with the folks from Perkins. We'll
Okay.
explore it more deeply.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Ann Doherty. I live on Irving Street, and as a matter of fact, I have another suggestion for you. I take Charles River Road every day. 95% of the time when I leave my house, I go down Charles River Road west towards the square because I can't get out of Irving Street. As people have noticed, that people back up.
Can you hold on 1 second? Sir, could you step out of the
Mr.
room,
Clifford.
please? Because, thank you. Lady deserves our full attention.
That's okay. So a couple of things is you cannot get from Irving Street and Arsenal Street across the street. I go to work at like 6 o'clock in the morning and you still can't because everybody on North Beacon Street, as the people have said, they back up and you can't get across because it doesn't clear out for the time that when my light goes, nobody obeys the traffic laws. My truck was nearly totaled going straight by the aggressive left-hand drivers who don't pay attention. I've never seen a cop at that intersection. It's unsafe to walk across. And then, I know some people aren't bikers. But if I wanted to ride my, if I can no longer leave my neighborhood on Charles River Road, if I wanted to ride my bike, what provisions are being made for Irvingtown for a bicycle? It's unsafe, even as it is now. So I just feel trapped in the neighborhood with this proposal. I'm all for the, oh, that's my phone. Somebody kill it for me, please. Sorry. So, thank you. So I'm all for the open space, but I feel like I'm trapped and I can't get out of the neighborhood.
Okay, well, thank you. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Hi, my name is John Bakke, and I live at the corner of Irving Street and Charles River Road. Just a few comments. One, by way of some context, as Tony was trying to set the context, it's important to remember that Charles River Road is not just a Watertown treasure. This is a national treasure. It's on the National Register of Historic Places, and it's a really important place, and it's not important as a transportation corridor. It's important because of the river there, because of the park there, and the road has to, the use of the road, the way it's designed, has to fit with that park environment. So it's one point I wanted to make. I appreciate Dan Driscoll's creativity, and I hope his suggestion gets a really close look. I would suggest taking it even further with the possibility of closing off the other end of Charles River Road at North Beacon Street. Now, a lot of what we've heard tonight presents, if you will, sort of contradictory points of view within the neighborhood, because we want to be able to get to the square, but we don't want other people to cut through our neighborhood to get to the square. So somehow that's going to have to be resolved, and I would suggest that one of the goals in looking at the alternatives should be zero increase in traffic within our neighborhood on Charles River Road or any of the neighborhood streets. That should be the goal, zero increase. And last, I have a question for Laura, which is it's not at all clear to me how the origin destination study connects with evaluating the alternatives and how the information that you'll get from that study will be used to, I would hope, select an alternative that minimizes the traffic impacts within our neighborhood.
So wait, I have one follow-up question for you, Jonathan. When you said, so I like your idea of looking at closing Charles River Road at the North Beacon side. Do you mean, wait, let me understand what the comment is. So do you mean in addition to closing it at Watertown Square, or instead of closing? You don't have to come back, instead of closing at Watertown Square? In addition to closing it, okay. Somebody get that in the notes correctly, please. So, and for the OD study, so that's just part of what the data that we're going to collect is. So we're going to collect traffic count data, which is a little easier to collect kind of more widespread through the neighborhood. But what we're trying to do with the OD data is get specific points where people who don't live in the neighborhood are entering. So that's why we chose, and this is up for discussion too, but that's why we chose Charles River at North Beacon, Charles River at Irving, Charles River at Watertown Square, and Irving at North Beacon, to get like main points where people who don't belong in the neighborhood may be entering, so that we could get a good sense of what the through traffic is. So, for example, if this defies what my expectations are, and what I think expectations of some others in the room are, and we see that really there's not a cut-through traffic problem in the evening, the problem's only in the morning, in terms of through traffic, not in terms of volume on the street, that would better inform, our westbound versus eastbound. I fully expect that we're going to see a lot more cut-through traffic in the evening, and that might also help us inform westbound versus eastbound. If we see that everybody who's turning left from North Beacon Street onto Charles River Road, that's using it to get to the square, is then going down Galen Street, and we're making targeted improvements along North Beacon Street, what we're going to start to test, because what we don't want to have happen is that North Beacon Street or Arsenal Street is so problematic that people will then go down Charles River Road anyway and go up Irving Street. Today, if you were to do that, you still have to get through the North Beacon Street, Arsenal Street intersection. It doesn't really save you any time to make those circuitous routes. So we're going to be using it to kind of test the circuity of what happens in the neighborhood to make sure that we are providing some recommendations that actually get people onto the primary roadway system and aren't just reshuffling them through the neighborhood.
Thanks,
Can I ask
Laurel.
a follow-up
Oh,
question while Laura's still there? I don't really understand closing the road at both ends. Then how do you get in and how do you get out? Can someone explain that?
I think that's for me to figure out. You know, I think, and maybe it's both. I mean, maybe we look at closing that end, the eastern end instead of the western end. But if you close both of them, you don't have any cut-through traffic in your neighborhood.
You don't have any-
But you,
can't leave.
right, you do, I mean, you do have a lot more of your neighbors, quote-unquote, and they're not cutting through, but quote-unquote, cutting through on your street, because maybe for whatever reason, it's easier to turn left or right from your street than their street because of sight distance or traffic backups from adjacent traffic signals or things like that. So it's certainly something we can evaluate. That's not one that we've thought of, so I don't have any preconceived thoughts about what the results might be.
Okay, so the gentleman in the Boston College sweatshirt, and then the gentleman back there. Yeah, and then we'll get to you. We are trying to wrap up around 8:30, and then we'll be available out in the hallway to answer questions and to go through the route discussion for anyone who wants to do that with us. So new comments would be great. Hello.
New comments?
New, yeah.
Pete Santola, 25 Thurston Road. I'm representing Thurston Road with my neighbor. Nobody's really talked about this. I've been there 55 years, and my family, the Castellanos, the DeJopolises, and the Fucci's were from Riverside Street from the 1930s. Obviously, things are going to change, and I like a lot of the ideas here, and I'm very happy that I'm on the other side. I think you've done a wonderful job. That's not saying I like any of the four choices. I think there should be choice 5 and choice 6. You know, I don't know what that looks like.
Okay.
But I'm thinking, you know, we're already kind of restricting that we're going to do something to Charles River Road. I don't know how many years ago they changed Charles River Road from 2 lanes to 1 lane to allow a bike path. I'm all for bikes. I like the bikes off the road, you know, a separate. You haven't seen me in a bike lately, but I think bike roads should be off the road. That's the safest way. And so what happens is just 1 lane until we get to the end, and then we got to kind of go on the curb to get there. So the question selfishly, I have a very short commute. How do I get there from Thurston Road to Town Hall? Quick. And again, that's selfish, but I tried to do something today. I went up Thurston, took a left on Riverside, had to pull over to the side of the road because a truck was coming up, took a right on Alfred, and then I was going to try to shoot across. No go. I took a right. I went up Irving Street, and I couldn't take a left because the traffic was backed up. I went past Toyota, and I took a left and all the way down. So,
How about walking?
huh?
What about walking?
Counselor, I should be walking, I understand that. But just a question, so I understand it's very difficult, my colleagues in the DPW do a great job, and I'm not a traffic guy, but I think we have to be careful that whatever we end up doing will have impacts that we don't really understand, because, you know, like a lot of people have said, this 300-unit space that's going in Irving, and you know, who knows what's going to happen. So thank you. But answer my question. What's my best way to work other than the bike?
Why don't
or
you see
walking?
her, we'll see her offline, Pete. I'm just going to, for a moment, I'm just going to ask the gentleman in the second row here with the cane if he'd like to come to the microphone. I don't know your name, sir, but Brian. And then I'll get back to everyone else that someone give, yes, thank you.
Okay, I don't live in any of those neighborhoods, okay? I did on Riverside when I first moved here 35 years ago. And the first week I had to learn how to go around Watertown Square, if you pardon the expression, with my eyes closed. And I did it for 3 days in order to figure out. I got a lovely T-shirt that says, "I survived Watertown Square." Has tracks down the back that look like tire treads. One of the things we're hearing about is the counting of cars. I don't hear anything about the counting of pedestrians. That square for me is a pedestrian opportunity. And if you do all of these improvements along Charles River Road, I'll want to go there even more as a pedestrian. It's not just a matter of the distance across the street, it's some of the cockamamie angles that the crosswalks require that you take, and then try to reorganize yourself to do it in a straight fashion. I also hope that there's a lot of discussion about what does this place look like when there's snow on the ground? Because that has literally caused blind people to die in this town.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. I think there was a gentleman over here. Yes, sir. Hold on. And then this lady in white, and then this gentleman, and that gentleman. And then I'm going to try to wrap up so we can do our chatting out in the hall.
Good evening. My name is Michael Donham. I live on Royal Street for about 22 years. I was a member of the Watertown Square Study Commission almost 20 years ago, and our experience, at least in my case, was that everybody had solutions that they thought were workable and perfect. None of those were magic solutions. There were no magic solutions. There were compromises, and God love you for trying. I was taken by the comments that the new development at the corner of Arsenal and Irving is going to dump traffic from the parking lots and attract traffic to the parking lots at drive time. We all know that drive time and the square is the worst possible time. You have currently 6 lanes at the crucial traffic lights, 2 on Charles River Road, 2 on North Beacon, and 2 at that same intersection with North Beacon. So you've got 6. You're taking away 2, and you're adding 1, if I understand those diagrams. So you're reducing at crucial points 6 lanes into 5. I don't see how you're going to improve traffic. I was in the square this afternoon at 3 o'clock on Arsenal Street. Traffic was going west, and traffic was backed up past the gas station all the way. It wasn't as though they were stopped at the traffic light, and then there was a gap. There was a solid lane of traffic going all the way. God love you.
Well, we'll try to figure that out and explain it. Yes, ma'am, and then this gentleman, and then that gentleman, and then I'm going to tell the counselors I do remember they're there, so, yeah.
Hi, I'm Diane Crowley. I live at 57 Parker Street, 2 blocks away from the famous Irving Street. I work at Perkins School for the Blind 3 days a week. I walk to the school. I walk along Irving Street, so I want to ditto everything everyone said about Irving Street, particularly at North Beacon and Arsenal Street intersections. North Beacon and whatever. But I want to talk more about the Arsenal Street and Arsenal Street and Irving Street intersection, because I also, several years ago, worked for Beaverbrook Step Group Home, which is the group home on Irving Street. A couple of years ago, one of our guys who was very high functioning, who worked in Waltham in one of the universities, was struck and killed while crossing a street within the white lines. He was about 200 to 300 pounds. A car came flying down the road and threw his body 100 feet, and he was killed. It took a lot out of all of us who worked there, and of course his co-residents. I'm concerned about the traffic on Irving Street, just because there is a group home there. It is the group home this man used to reside at. And I think that with all the apartments that are being built, we would have about approximately 1,000 units between the 3 different developments. These people are neighbors now. They're not just people that are going to cut through to go to work. And everybody that lives in Watertown knows that Irving Street is a shortcut that connects you at least from North Beacon and up onto Arsenal Street. So I think it's only a matter of time before these other people figure this out. I'm concerned about congestion and road rage. And I think when people finally get the light, they're just going to gun it. And I'm really, really worried for the people who do live in the group home. In addition to that, I know at one point there were bike paths or lanes that were proposed on Irving Street, which I understand now is not the case and is going to go along Taylor. However, there are large markings all over Irving Street at the intersections of Arsenal and North Beacon that show that there's big green pad signs there, there's markings all over both lanes of traffic that advertise, ride your bike here, ride your bike here, ride your bike here. I don't think that's safe for the people in the group home. It's not a wide enough street. It's not safe for bikers, and it's not safe for the people who live on Irving Street, particularly those in the group home. I would like to see those markings removed, at least the big green pads, because it's too much of an advertisement. Before Taylor Street actually becomes a real bike path, I think people will just form muscle memory, get used to going down Irving Street. I'm not saying people can't ride on any street they want to. All I'm saying is, like, why not, let's not condition them to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Gentlemen, these two gentlemen, and then we'll go to any counselors who want to have a couple of remarks.
Yes, Dennis J. Duff, 33 Spruce Street. Well, why are you here, Mr. Duff? You don't live in the neighborhood.
Yes, you do.
But I think I came because traffic is an issue all over town. And to be honest with you, I find it a little bit elitist to close the whole street. And I agree. And of those who know me a long time ago when I was on the redevelopment authority know I've been for parks for many years. Matter of fact, I was the third vote for Arsenal Park. Put that aside. The other issue that bothers me is that, say you have 100,000 cars in Watertown and you eliminate an area that traffic can go through. Where do you think those cars are going to go? They're going to go in the other neighborhoods. So we all get impacted by how the neighborhood goes. And as Mr. Santola, my old friend, pointed out how he's going to get to work, well, you probably have to go all the way up Arsenal Street to School Street and then cut through Walnut, Cypress, or my street, Spruce Street. Now, in the morning, I can't get out across School Street to get to Dexter Ave because of the traffic. Now the town wants to put a traffic light on Boylston and Mount Auburn, which will queue up, and I'll never get out of Spruce Street. And as I once commented, I'll never be able to take a left turn to go to the town hall to pay my water bill. Thank you.
You could mail it. And yes, gentlemen, you're doing our wrap-up here, except for our counselors.
Great. Hi, my name is Doug Sire, and I live in 20 Irving Park, which is in the corner of Royal and Irving Park. I've lived in Watertown for 20 years, and I've lived at this house for 15 or so. One of my concerns is it's really hard to leave the neighborhood. It's gotten increasingly harder to leave the neighborhood. So I work in Waltham, and I ride my bike with my 7-year-old to Hosmer School every day. And it's gotten really difficult to just get from our neighborhood anywhere north. I avoid the square, you know, and when I do go through the square, I go down along the river. So losing that would be bad. I'd be willing to sacrifice that if there's some way I could leave my neighborhood at all. You know, when I go out, I go towards the Toyota dealership. They shut down. There's 3 ways to egress. You go through the square, which is a non-starter. You go down Irving Street, which the issue in there is actually the other side. Everyone parks on the other side of the street by where they, on the other side of the street where the apartment building is going on, all along where the group home is. There's parking along that road. It's super narrow. I bike home through there, and I bike down the river to work. But the next street over is residential. I don't like cutting through there because I don't like driving on residential streets either. And then the next one down by the O'Reilly Auto Parts has been closed for all summer. So it's really difficult to actually leave. And when traffic backs up at North Beacon Street, it makes it even harder, you know, to get out of my neighborhood. So, you know, that's a big concern for us. And, you know, ditto Irving Park is a little terrifying.
Thank you.
But.
Thank you very much, yeah. Are there any counselors who want to ask any questions, or, yeah? Okay. Okay. You do need to go to the microphone. And I will just remind everyone, we will be available after these remarks. And if, you know, Laura's already told you, we will be a little bit quiet, but we will answer any comments that come to us, try to answer your questions. You've asked a lot of really good questions tonight, and so we'll probably put together a frequently asked questions so you can direct your neighbors to those questions to get some answers. I also, excuse me, Counselor, I just want to thank everyone for their patience and for being short-winded, because it's a great virtue. Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you very much, and I do appreciate everyone's comments and everyone taking time out to be here tonight. I know there are a lot of meetings, and people have a lot of different pressures in their lives, but this is very important, and I do appreciate you being here. I appreciate all your phone calls and your emails as well. One comment, I have just a couple of comments. On the study times and any of these traffic issues, I would ask that please don't just do it in the summer. Do it as long as possible and in many ways as possible. It's not just the students that are away. It's a very different population and traffic. And I know it will be difficult given the utility work in the spring and trying to time it, but I think it's worth spending time on that. I also want people to know that it was recommended to have very specific public engagement, not just meetings such as this that came out of the Arsenal study. And so I would ask that we honor that and do more engagement than we usually do. This is a unique time in Watertown. It's a very different development from the past, and we really need that. I would also ask that materials such as tonight's presentation be distributed before the meetings. I can't tell you how many public meetings, no matter what they are, the comments are always, if we had them before, we could have intelligent questions, we could look at them before, and I can tell you that counselors did also not get this presentation before tonight's meeting. And last, I love to walk the neighborhoods. I know some people have mentioned that, and I invite you to contact me. I will walk with you, I will meet you, I will have neighborhood meetings, and just as you've given your emails to the team tonight, I would encourage you to give your emails to your counselors. When we come into office, we don't receive a resident directory with emails and phone numbers. So if you don't reach out to us, we don't necessarily, short of knocking on your door, we can't reach you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other counselors? Yes. And the pad with the sign-in, does someone have the pad with the sign-ins? Oh, great, great, thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Michael Dottoli. I'm a town councilor at large. I live on the sort of other side of Watertown over on Carroll Street, but obviously this is of interest to me for a lot of reasons, and I guess I have 2 points. One is I heard somebody talking about looking at the traffic patterns all over town. I still believe that we really need a more comprehensive study to look at where these cars are coming from, because I know they're cutting
Excuse me,
through.
Mike.
Yeah.
Could you guys take the conversation outside, please?
Thank you.
Thanks. Go ahead, Mike.
Where these cars are coming from when they're cutting through, because I think that, again, people will seek alternate patterns that might not only impact what we're seeing on the map, but other areas of Watertown. That's where I'm concerned. And the second one is, and I know, as somebody who took the T for many years, and that was frustrating for me trying to get into Boston, utilizing the 73 to the number 1, I recognize that we need to make more opportunities for people to travel safely, particularly when they are transferring from one bus to the other. And it seems like a lot of these changes are stemming from the fact that we need to make that connection from the 71 to the 70 more seamless, so people are obviously feeling safe. But I guess I want to ask, where is the MBTA in all of this in helping us to, we're going through this process and we're looking at making a lot of significant changes that are going to impact a lot of people in this room. Have we had an opportunity to work with the MBTA on some kind of an option that's going to assist us in making this project a reality? So that's my question.
So Laura's going to address that. I will say that we had slides on the bus issues, but we just had so much information tonight, so that, Laura, you want to talk about that a bit?
Yes, we have met with the T. They were involved in both the Arsenal Street corridor study, and we met with them a few weeks ago, and I believe there was somebody here from the T tonight.
Yes, there
I think
was.
he left a few minutes ago. But they are interested. They are willing to help. They understand the issues that the connectivity problems are causing and the sightlines are causing, and they're willing to be partners. They have some concerns as well, especially related to construction, whatever that might be, and how they run the 71 bus during construction, because it's on catenary, and if they have to cut power, that's difficult for them to run the service. But they're partners with us, and we're meeting with them fairly regularly, along with MassDOT and DCR.
Thanks, Laura. Any other counselors at the moment?
Nancy?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to let you close the meeting.
Thanks. We're going to, I told the committee members I'd give them a few more minutes. It's 8:38. We do have the opportunity for you guys to meet with the project staff a little bit after this, but just a few more questions from the committee members, please. Do you want to go first, Tony?
It's fine. Laura? Yeah. Is it, I had three questions, actually, and maybe 4 questions. Maybe 6 questions, I don't know. So,
You should cut him off.
There's a couple of us up here, Tony.
Watch out for Nancy and her 3-minute rule.
that's for, expanding the neighborhood studies. I'd like to know what could be done to expand the traffic studies into other neighborhoods in the surrounding area, and whether there's that, I can make a motion for that, but I'd like to know whether that could be done before we have to ask that it be done by vote.
Yeah, I mean, cost and the scope of this particular project aside, we can expand it. I think we'd want to have a discussion, a broader discussion about what we're hoping to capture, because I feel like it is important, and I live near here, so I understand why it's important. But I don't know if it's really going to inform this specific project as much as, the larger targeted regional intersections that might need some improvements. But we can expand it into adjacent neighborhoods, either, for this project or surrounding.
I think for this project would be helpful if we could do that.
Yeah.
If we can expand it. Sure. The second question, I want to second Councilor Feltner's concern about when you're doing the studies, that it's not just be during the summer. That
We typically do it while school's in session. Our hope is that we can get it in the spring, and that's colleges as well, not just the local schools. But our hope is we'll be able to fit it in the spring before the schools are out of session. We'll have to wait and see how the timing goes. I'm not a big fan of doing it in the summer either. We might do some data collection in the summer, but I think if we wind up not being able to do it till July, we would try to push it until September and then rework our schedule from there.
Okay. And then I want to second the question on materials. We didn't have electricity at the house today, so I'm not sure whether this piece came to me on the email, but I would love to have seen it prior to the meeting. So,
Sure, we can do that in advance of the next
counselors
meetings.
as well as the public have an opportunity to see the material. And then the questions that people are having, that I got some through email and others, were about the scope of the project. I just want to make sure that if we come up with some suggestions, or that after you do the studies, there's some specific suggestions, for example, including, they used to call them speed bumps, I forget what they call them now. Raised tables, thank you. Raised tables on Irving, or something changes around Charles River to slow folks down and so forth, that financially can be included in the project. Is that possible?
I'm going to look to the town a little bit. Yes, I'm seeing a thumbs up. Yes, that is possible. Thank you.
Jerry. Jerry's been hiding over there all night.
Jerry.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Susan?
Yeah, thanks. I guess I have a question about what Tony asked. The yellow necklace there covers a large area. Are you asking for it to be expanded across North Beacon Street?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you have, like, across Arsenal Street as well, it sounds
Yes.
like? Yeah. I mean, it might not be, we might try to target it a little more, so, up Irving Street, up School Street, maybe not as wide a net as it gets further away, but yeah. We can look at
Okay. And my only other comment is I really liked the suggestion of a field trip.
I think it's a little premature right now for a field trip, but I think as we start to think about this more and get some data, I like the idea too. I think we could do a few of them. They're probably in the spring. They're probably not, I mean, as much as it might be nice to walk around in January, I just don't think there'll be a lot of value to doing it until we have some ideas where we can counter. So you might say, well, did you think of this? Well, did you think of that? And it'd be nicer to be able to have some stuff, some information so that we can have a two-way conversation while we're out there. But I think it's something that the town's willing to consider.
You know, maybe also when you get further, there's all kinds of things you can do online with, you know, video things.
Sure.
Thanks.
And we do have some of that, and I'm getting way far afield now, but we do have, we've flown at least the immediate study area with our drone. We have drone footage. We're going to have a micro simulation of what the traffic patterns would look like. So we do have some of the computer-generated types of
To
things.
make it more accessible to people who
To
have
make-
trouble visualizing things.
Exactly. So that is all planned. We're not anywhere close to being able to have the data. We have a good base from the Arsenal Street corridor study. We're kind of bringing it in, making it nicer because now we have a specific project to evaluate, but there will be that information available in the future.
Thanks. So just, I think a lot of the points about the neighborhood and the intersections are going to go back into the machine here. At the, you know, just in terms of the guy who left who said that he's worried about whether written comments or even kind of stated comments today are going to get recorded. And that's the reason that she's here. You know, they have a pretty good system. You know, we'll make a report to the full town council, which will be a briefer version, but they are putting, I mean, it's not verbatim, but every single comment is going to be in there, and we've been through that process with them before, so these aren't going to get forgotten. And that's, you know, kind of stuff that's going into the DPW World Tech planning process. There was an item that I think is kind of outside of the road work process, which is the rats. That's probably a public health issue. Could you guys, I'm just looking to the DPW there, could you move that along to the health department? I mean, I don't think we need a formal motion for that, but you guys have those bait boxes that you put in different neighborhoods. You dig up the ground, it does kind of cause the rodents out, and we've been trying to work on that in different parts of town, and that's been heard. So that's that. I'd like to ask the committee for a couple motions.
Before we do that, one other quick request. People talked about a fifth and a sixth or a seventh option. If folks have some ideas but need some technical assistance to help them so that they can, you're not going to be able to put something as clean and clear as you might have put together. You are available?
Yes.
Okay.
And so is,
I want to add one more 2 cents as well. That what I heard tonight that affected me the most was people worried about their neighborhood. They're seeing it changing already. They're worried about more changes. They don't see their neighborhood as speedways, and I feel like you're sensitive to that, but I feel the neighborhood's very vulnerable. There's big buildings going on all around it, and that's the thing I want you to please pay the most attention to.
Sure. Thank you.
So the motions that I was going to suggest, first one was going to be, you know, to you guys. With this, we have a referral to talk about this from the town council. I'd like to ask for a referral to continue the discussion so that, like, as the next phase is advanced, it can come back to us and we can do this again. And would you?
I'll make that motion.
A second.
And thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And the other one would be that we do recommend to the manager that they proceed through the steps that they've proposed here to do the further analysis to keep the project moving. You guys okay with that?
Why is it? Oh.
It's basically just like a vote
Yes.
of confidence to continue with the process that she's stated, which is all these license, what do you call that, location?
Origin destination.
Origin
survey.
destination.
I would make one comment about that. It was, of all the emails flying back and forth, it was very troubling that the flyer for this event said draft final, and I think that caused a lot of unnecessary anxiety among people, and everybody corrected and said, oh, no, this is just a concept plan, but it was really put out in a way that was not clear to me or to the public that things were not set in stone. So I'd ask that you please be more sensitive about that in the future.
Sure.
And the department's also gotten the message on that, too. so I can.
Well,
I
it
spoke
can't
them
hurt to
today.
repeat it.
Yep. Now it's loud and clear. So about moving forward with the continued studies?
So, and I've put the slide back up if you want to refer to it.
What
All
slide?
all the stuff that we're looking at, just a summary of all of the stuff that we're going to continue to study.
Oh, I would make a motion that you keep on.
I'm just concerned about one thing. I don't want us to reconvene after, I would like that.
Yeah, the microphones are really low, miss.
I'm wondering if it's possible to reconvene a meeting midway through the work, to give folks just an update on what's happening, on how the studies are going, what you have learned so far, what is, I just feel like we're going to go from here, and the next time we're going to see you is when everything is done, sometime in the spring, we're going to meet again.
Sure.
And I just think that's, I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but to me, that's a long time.
No,
And
I definitely, we can set a schedule, we can work with you to set a schedule that makes sense for regular check-ins. I always am a little worried about meeting fatigue, so we don't want to come back to you without having all of this data parsed in some way. And we're not going to have that data until the summer. But as long as everybody understands that a lot of the data is not going to get parsed, I mean, there is work that is to be done that we are going to do.
you can report on it.
Correct. But so as long as people don't come angry at the next meeting because I haven't even collected the origin destination data yet, I think we're open to more meetings. I want everybody to understand that we do have a little bit of a data collection hurdle to pass. And
I understand that completely. I just feel like there's going to be a miscue if we go from A to B, and B is not for, there's just too much memory that's going to be lost. So even if it's a check-in report, hearing back from folks, that's all.
Well,
Counselor,
what you've done, I mean, you will have done something. Just tell us what you've done.
Well, I'm all for putting more meetings onto the Public Works Committee. Unfortunately, after December, 2/3 of the committee won't be sitting at this table anymore. So, as the vice chair, you can take all the meetings you want, sir.
Oh, thank you.
I hope, we don't know what the composition of the committee will be, but.
That's right.
But,
I might not even be here myself.
with that point in, you know you will be. With that point in mind, would you colleagues make
Yes,
that motion to?
I did make a motion to ask the consultants to continue the process that,
Second the motion.
All approved?
aye.
Through
Wait, what?
Through the Public Works.
the Public Works.
Through the Public Works.
He doesn't want us to be
Oh,
talking
we
to
don't
Laura
tell the
out of
consultants
class.
what to do. We ask Public Works to tell the consultants what to do. So that's my motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Now, I think we'd like to move to the we have some other items, if time allows, on the agenda. I'm going to say we're going to skip those because time did not allow.
I make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
moved.
Aye.
Aye.